Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to another episode of Rebecca Has No Self-Control on eBay, aka let's examine another antique. So I have actually been better recently about not buying a whole ton of things on eBay. Like I think I've only bought 3 things so far in 2021. So I mean, I call that an improvement. And I've realized that there's certain, I guess, holes in my collection that I would like to fill, and those are really the only things that I'm allowed to buy. So one of the things that I realized as I went through and cataloged my whole collection, which if you have not seen the cataloging my collection video, I will pop that up here and down in the description. But one of the things I realized is that I don't have any Bustle era anything. Bodices, dresses, nothing. My collection goes from the 1860s up to the 1890s with nothing in between. And that's a really weird void and I want to fix that. So I'm hoping that today's article will fix that. So I was browsing through eBay, as you do. I mean, I try not to, but I do when I'm bored. And I was browsing through and I came across the bodice that we're going to be looking at today. And I was like, I think it was listed as 1900s bodice, but that looks like an 1880s bodice to me. So we are going to jump in and see if it's true, if it's actually an 1880s bodice. Now, I purchased this bodice from a seller who's not an antiques dealer or anything like this. This is something that she found, I think, in her attic or in a relative's attic. So it's part of her family. Let's take a look at it. So I've already removed the outer packaging, but it's in a shoebox, which I appreciate because it kind of helps keep it a little nicer. Let's take a look here. Oh, okay, we've got a couple of loose buttons here, so maybe something has fallen off of it. I don't know, we will see. The color's gorgeous. Like, look at that blue. You can tell right through this bubble wrap that the color is just beautiful. I'm gonna transfer this camera now and give you a better angle of me opening it. All right, we have a lot of tape here, so I wanna be really careful that none of this sticks to the bodice. And I have my acid-free paper here down on my table surface. Oh, this color is so gorgeous. Oh, I hope this color is coming out on screen because this is like crayon blue. Like this is the color of blue silk that I'm looking for my Felicity Christmas dress. This is what I need. Oh, beautiful. Oh, look. Okay, yeah, so those buttons they do go with this. The sleeve trimming is like, oh my gosh. Wow. These pleats and everything. Oh my gosh. And you can see this like machine stitching, which I love, just being super, super obvious on the hem. I love that it's machine stitching. Wow. Oh, hey, so the buttons have been moved over at some point. Like there is the scarring from all of these buttons that goes all the way up. They were moved over to allow for, I'd say about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches extra room. And because of that, it actually looks large enough that I might be able to get this on my dress form. So I'm gonna have to give that a try. But, oh, this is so pretty. In fact, I'm gonna go grab my dress form right now just so that we can do maybe some of the examining on the dress form. All right, so here we are on the form now. Obviously it doesn't quite fit. And the other thing is that it's really interesting. By taking this out, they've actually made superfluous the bottom 2 buttonholes. So that's, I guess, why those 2 buttons were loose in a bag. It's not that buttons have gotten lost, all of the buttons are there, but those 2 bottom buttons were no longer needed. I think they were right here and maybe right there on the very edge. I'm not sure. It's definitely odd. And it almost makes me wonder if these 2 buttonholes were added as an afterthought, but they look exactly the same as the others, because it makes you wonder, oh, well, maybe it was originally like this and then it was changed, but there's not really a sign of that. So it's definitely intriguing. And also this is not the only area where it was let out. I was noticing on the back as I put it on that the back has also been let out just that little bit on all of the seams. So I haven't really checked the side seams. It's entirely possible those have been as well. Yes. The side seams have also been let out. So they let out every seam in order to make this larger at some point. So they really went for quite an increase on there in size. And I'm glad now that you can see this color because it really is just such a vibrant blue. It's so beautiful. The seaming is very interesting in the back here too, because I've never seen a bodice where the side back seam actually goes up to the shoulder here. It's very, very intriguing. And this is, I believe, like called a swallowtail back. So we have the pieces like this, so it's definitely able to fit some sort of a bustle. It doesn't feel like it would be over a very large one, so it's possible that this might actually be early 80s or late 70s and be really more of a natural form, which also kind of goes along with this level of trimming, because I feel like you don't see this much sleeve trimming on something that is later in the 80s. This is really an earlier type of trimming where you have trimming over trimming over trimming. We have the pleats here. So they are put on underneath what looks like the edge of the sleeve maybe. And then we have this multi-tiered ruffle. No, I think it's actually all one piece, but it has been shirred down with 2 rows right here of shirring and then puffed right there. And then another 2 rows of the shirring. No, this is definitely 2 pieces because we have an edge here. So yeah, this has 4 rows of stitching to shirr it and then have the little puffs in between. And then this is just a ruffle here that's put on underneath it. So it's really quite thick with trims. You can actually kind of see just how it like holds its shape with all of those trims. But gosh, it's so pretty. And just had a thought, interestingly enough. So I love this shaping in the sleeve, first off. That's just beautiful. This is the back of the sleeve here. But interestingly enough, the sleeve was not let out at any point. So we have a lot of alterations going on with the bodice here, but nothing with the sleeve, which is really quite intriguing. So as far as the actual shape of the bodice goes, it's also intriguing because it seems like on one hand, the bust is not very big. Like the bust of this dress form is really not very big. She's quite flat. And yet at the same time, obviously it fits kind of in the bust, but doesn't fit in the waist. It's the waist that is too small. So I feel like she was very, very flat chested, this lady. I mean, we do have the dart shaping here, but I don't know. It just seems like she obviously had a smaller waist than this lady, but she seems very broad, and maybe that is just the shape of the dress form kind of skewing everything. But yeah, it's very interesting. I wish I could get this closed down here at the bottom so that I could see what that would look like with the current buttons versus with where it is, but I'll have to do that laying flat. Okay, that's about everything for on the form, but I want to take a closer look at a lot of things. So let's go ahead and take her off the form so that we can get that closer look. So I've started with lapping this where the buttons were originally, and you can see the shape of these little front points here, which is just super, super nice. I mean, these points are beautiful. And it really, like this bottom button was on the very edge. I mean, you can see right where it was sewn on, that is the edge of this, which is really, really interesting that it was so far off. And because it was so far off, it's actually taken a little bite out of the fabric where it was straining. And then we have the rest of the buttonholes here, which that's really the only damage to this whole bodice that I've noticed so far is a little tear where each of the buttons were originally. And I think that's because the shanks on these buttons are really, I mean, they're sturdy shanks. So it almost seems like they had dug themselves into the bodice. I'm not sure what these are made out of, whether this is like mother of pearl or shell or what, but they're very opalescent and just super, super pretty. And I love that the 2 buttons that were taken off are still here. I think that's so, so cool. So you can see some of this alteration a little better here. So it was let out about, I'd say 1/2 inch on each of those seams. So that was 2 side seams and I think the 2 back seams where it was let out, plus then moving the buttons over about 1.25 inches. Okay, let's take a look inside. I mean, the condition on this is impeccable. Like, it's really, I'm kind of blown away. Honestly, if it didn't have some of these hallmarks, like using the selvage or having the boning or having the lining be the, kind of standard brown lining that they used for everything, it almost feels like this is new. There's just, it's rare that I've seen something in this good of condition. So I guess this is one of the things where there's some stitches are coming out. The sort of waist stay bit is coming off just a little bit. We have boned darts right in here. And they're quite stiff. I thought on the listing, she showed that there was a bone poking out somewhere. Oh, there it is. Just found it. So here's our one channel where the boning is poking out. And yeah, I believe that's baleen. Generally, that sort of black, I think, is a sign of baleen. Looks very jagged. I doubt that it was this jagged originally, but geez, look at that. So that's our one where the boning is poking out. But again, like so little damage. It's just incredible. We have bones on these 2 side seams here and then the 2 darts. No boning at all in the back. And the other interesting thing here is that our side back seams are pressed different ways. And this doesn't seem like an age thing. Maybe it is, or maybe someone just pressed it closed at some point because it looks like it wanted to be pressed open. It's just so pretty. The selvage is selvage both on the twill and on the silk, which is cool to see. And then these, on the other hand, are just whipped over with tiny, tiny little stitches. The swallowtail points are very interesting because the center is just twill down to the edge and then it's whipped around the edge of the hem with little stitches. But these bits here off to the side, these are fully lined. So I guess they expected that these might fly up at some point and that therefore they should be fully faced with the silk. And we just have some whip stitches here at the side to close that together. But yeah, we have a pretty deep binding because I believe this is bias. Yeah, this is on the bias, this binding. So that's about 1.5 inches, I think, ish wide, this binding that goes around. And then our front is treated a little funky because it's got a little bit of a facing here up to where it comes to the buttons. And I believe that's going to be the same on both sides. Oh, actually, it's much wider over here because we're making use of that wide selvage. And we have hooks and eyes for the stay tape section, 5 of them. But then we have those functional buttons with all of the beautifully done hand-bound buttonholes. Just so nice. I mean, really, it's pretty straightforward construction. The only weird thing is that seam running all the way up to the shoulder, but everything else is pretty normal. The 2 gussets was a very normal thing. Oh, actually, you know what? This seam is coming undone. You can see the baleen from this side, so that is quite interesting. So we do have a little bit of seams coming out just with the baleen. That's a different piece of baleen than was sticking out on the inside. And the collar is very thin. I don't think there's anything in it at all besides maybe a piece of the cotton inside. I think it's really, it might just be 2 layers of silk. It feels very thin, just a tiny little standing collar. And that seems very 1880s to me. So that's why I'm thinking with the shape of where the bustle doesn't seem to want to stick out a whole lot, the tails, probably very early 80s would be my best guess, also with the trimming. And you can see where that sleeve shirring inside, there it is, at the elbow, really gives us a nice sleeve shape. This is the shape of that sleeve. And it is a 2-piece sleeve. We've got a narrow underpiece right here, and then that really wide overpiece that is shirred in at the elbow. There's barely even any underarm staining. That's pretty amazing. We have a tiny bit of cracking right here in the silk, but condition really is fantastic. Oh, this is so exciting. I'm so pleased to add this to my collection, and honestly, there's not much more to say about it. I mean, it's gorgeous. I'll give you a waist measurement, and I'll give you what it probably was originally waist-wise, but that's probably about it otherwise for this one, because the construction really is pretty straightforward. Oh, I guess one other thing to point out, because I always have to do this to my bodices, but look, the front is curved. This is not a straight piece. This is fully curvy. Very nice to see. I know I'm not quite fitting into the frame here, but trying to do this free-handed. It really would have been an odd look to have this over here, because look at this, it like no longer at all fits. Like, that is what that looks like right here at the bottom. So that doesn't make any sense at all, whereas this would have come together nicely and been a nice little V. Having it up here is just, that is just weird. Okay, let's get a measurement for you. Okay, so where it is now on the waist, very weird waist, we have a measurement of approximately 29.5 inches across all the way around all the way, which is interesting because my dress form is definitely smaller than that, but this didn't fit the waist. And I think it might be there was excess at the sides and kind of in the back, and the front was too small to get over my dress form. I don't know, that's really odd that it's actually that large. The actual size of what this was originally would have been more like 28 minus those seams that were taken in. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These two are a little bit narrower. So like 5, that's about 2.5, at least about 3 inches that it was let out, plus the front. So we're looking at more like a 25-inch waist that was let out to 29.5. So that's a huge difference to see that much of a change. That is, I mean, that's extreme. Lengthwise, it also looks longer, which is why I can't get this in frame. Normally on my antique bodices, the camera is still in this position and I can get it in frame, but it's a lot longer than a lot of my other antiques. And I think part of that is because the era of this bodice, if this is natural form, you know, we have the waist about here and there is still this much down to the bottom below the waist. And then also it's a high collar bodice, obviously, too. But yeah, it's definitely longer, which is cool to see than a lot of the others in my collection. So I lied, there is more to see, because I need to retract my previous statement about her not being very curvy. I think maybe what I meant is she's not very busty. But I think one of the reasons that I was having such a hard time fitting it, laying it flat and stuff before, is that she's extremely hippie. My dress form just wasn't filling her out enough. So I've actually stuffed some batting and a little bit of padding underneath her hips. Now these right here, this one, I pinned this in place like it originally was. I went for this one. This one's about where it originally was, but at this point it becomes too small for my dress form. So here it's just too small all the way up really for my dress form. And even this, it's like, it's sticking out away from my dress form, but it can't close together. And so, yeah, she is very hippie, but even originally she was very hippie, but very small busted, I think. So definitely an interesting body shape, but I think it looks a lot better on the form now that we have it actually closed, at least close, kind of closed. And you can really just see how much this is coming in and then going out now that it's being filled out a little bit better. Okay, so that's really all that I have for you now but I just wanted to show you that one last little bit. For a moment while I was pinning it, I was almost wondering if it was taken out because it was used as for someone who was pregnant, but I think I was wrong. I think she's just hippie. It's not that it was sticking forward, it just wanted to be stuck out to the sides. So I know that construction-wise, that might not have been quite as interesting as some of the later bodices when we get into the 90s and the aughts and stuff with all those weird, crazy closures. But I am so excited to add this piece to my collection. First, it's one with a little bit of provenance. I'm hoping maybe that I will receive more provenance from its original owner. And I did. According to the seller, if the bodice does date from the early 1880s, it's possible that it belonged to Etta Carmichael, who was born in 1861 in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, or possibly her sister Elizabeth. But at least it came from a family as opposed to just a random eBay listing. I think that that's really, really cool. And I mean, the color, I'm still shocked at just how beautifully blue this is. Like, this is the color that I want to wear all of the time because this is like my favorite shade of blue. So very thrilled with that, and the beautiful sleeve decorations and just seeing it being let out and the otherwise almost impeccable condition. So excited to add this to my collection and to get something that fills in a little bit of that huge like 20-year gap that I had going on. That's really exciting as well. So I hope that you did enjoy this video on this beautiful piece here. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post antique videos every month here on YouTube, so I will leave a link to that playlist down below with all of the rest of the ones that I have shot so far, and another one will be coming out next month. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs on Tuesday and other costuming content like this out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you would like to support my antique eBay addiction and all of the other work that I do here on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi accounts down below. I want to give a special shout out to my wonderful patrons, and all of my romantic, Victorian, and Edwardian tier patrons are listed right here. Thank you all especially so much. And thank you all so much for joining me today. I do hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!